Welcome back to the Film Field NFL, everybody. Today we are talking about wide receiver rankings. I've talked about this in the past about how I typically go about ranking prospects in each draft. But before we get into that, I want to give a general consensus about how I feel about this class. If you've seen any of my other videos about this class in particular, I've talked about the fact that I think that this is a very, very good class. I think that this is a class, to me, that has about 6 first-round graded guys to me. And outside of that, I think there's a drop-off after those first 6. But I don't think it's rotational wide receiver fours. I think you have plenty of deep threats, Project X receivers, slashers that come from G5 schools that are interesting, dynamic small slot receivers. There's enough depth here as well as variety. And I think that's why this class is going to see a lot of guys go from round 2 to 3, as opposed to a deep run later on when guys think they can get somebody in the 4th round, right? And generally, I think that the conversation around this class has been a little bit weird, a little bit strange. At first, we had a lot of the hype of Makai Lemon coming out, and then it kind of turned into the Jordan Tyson conversation, and then the medical eval came into question, and people started putting Tate as number 1. And now, as we get a few days away from the draft, we're kind of back to the whole, hey, is Jordan Tyson wide receiver 1 conversation again? And maybe that's where we'll lead with this conversation, because I have a few thoughts on Tyson. But before we do, I want to go over how my tiering works. Tier 1 to me is Malik Nabers, Jamar Chase, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr. level guys, right? It's I would take you number 1 overall type guys. Tier 2 is I'd take you top 10, I'd take you top 12, but you're maybe not necessarily a blue chip receiver, but you're the next thing below that. You are pseudo blue chip to me. So those are guys like JSN, that's guys like Brian Thomas Jr., last year Tedero McMillan, and then this year I have 4 tier 2 guys, which is a lot. I can't really remember the last time I've had that many tier 2 guys. Tier 3 is typically the back end of the first round. So that's picks 22 to 32, where it's these guys are very good. I can see them slipping to the 2nd round, but they're definitely guys that can solidify themselves as superstar wide receiver 2s. I don't typically see them as a wide receiver 1. They can probably survive as a wide receiver 1, but it's not ideal for them. Last year, that would have probably been guys like Matthew Golden, Emeka Ibuka, and then the year before then, it was most definitely guys like Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Adonai Mitchell, and then this year, I've got 2 of them. So that's a total of 6 receivers. Not a tier 1 guy in this class, but I do think we overrate the level of tier 1 receivers versus tier 2. To me, you don't need a Jamar Chase level prospect in this class for it to be a good receiver class. Tier 2 is great as well. It's kind of like if we had Cam Ward and Fernando Mendoza in the same class, and you pretended that makes it a weaker QB class just because there's not a Caleb Williams. That is the upper echelon, and that is the elite of the elite, but these are guys that are going to be day 1 massive impacts now. To me, guys like Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, Jordan Tyson, that's day 1 huge impact. That's a guy I'm taking top 10. Now, with that being said, I want to get into my rankings here because they're a bit different from other people in certain regards. But I want to start off with Carnell Tate, who is my wide receiver 1 in this class. He grades out about pretty similar to Tedero McMillan for me last year. I think I've got him a hair over Tedero McMillan. I think he is an unbelievably savvy, smooth route runner, unbelievably crisp. He isn't Justin Jefferson as a player, but in comparison to the way that he builds up his strides with his legs, with those long strides, very similar. Outside of that, he is not Justin Jefferson in any way, but that aspect of their game, of their athletic ability, is very similar. And it's the reason that you don't see him really crunch up the spacing of his strides in his routes. He is so crisp at continuing that length. It's the reason why I think the speed conversation isn't very valid for Carnell Tate. I'll explain why. A lot of people have started to get a little bit down on him because of the 40 he ran. That is bogus to me. Absolutely bogus. To me, speed is not how you become an elite, deep vertical threat in the league. There's a reason we know that, because Xavier Worthy isn't one of those guys, right? All these speedy receivers are guys that don't know how to leverage press, beat man coverage, guys who don't understand how to have diverse release packages, right? There isn't just the one thing to playing as a vertical threat, which is speed. It's not that. There's a reason Jalen Hyatt didn't work out. if you want to be a vertical threat that actually has a step on defenders, you have to tempo your routes, you have to understand leverage, you have to understand how to stack DBs, and all these aspects of the game don't involve speed. Because if you're doing a great job of attacking the blind spot of the defender and stacking them with your release and with those initial first couple little milliseconds of the play, then you're gonna get defenders beat deep down the field. It's why JSN does it. A lot of people like to talk about how, we're in a new age of slot, power slot receivers. They're dominating the league. It's why you should take Mekhi Lemon high. But the reality is, as much as JSN was a part of that, he was playing vertically out wide quite a bit this year, and he showed why he doesn't have to be ultra fast to be a deep threat, because he understands leverage, tempoing, he understands attacking blind spots and setting up defenders and stacking them with diverse release packages. That's the key, and Tate has those. Now, I am not saying he's as smooth as JSN. I don't think he's that kind of athlete, but he's a different kind. To me, he is very similar to a Calvin Ridley at Alabama, but maybe just like he looks a bit bigger frame-wise with his shoulders and his hands. But he's very similar in that regard. I also think he has only the slightest bit of T. Higgins to him. But I would not call him a T. Higgins comp. But he is my wide receiver one. His hands are unbelievable. He has the most aesthetically pleasing ability to catch the ball. It's always away from his frame, diamond hands. It's perfect. And to me, he's easily wide receiver one. I do like this class quite a bit, but to me, he just has the not highest ceiling, but one of the higher ceilings to achieve very quickly, while also having a very safe floor. So he's wide receiver one for me. Wide receiver two is going to surprise a lot of people. Casey Concepcion. And the reason why is because, have you watched him? I mean, when we're talking about diverse release packages, speed off the line of scrimmage, diverse routes, that's Casey Concepcion. The big conversation, obviously, is about the drops. To me, the drops are not that big of a problem, and here's why. When we talk about drops, and we talk about drops for players who have bad habits, bad catching techniques, it typically comes from the lens of, hey, this guy is not a superb athlete. This guy struggles with other things, so it makes the drops worse, right? Deontay Johnson's a good example. A guy who I thought was a very crisp route runner, but struggled in other regards, struggled against press, all these other things. So when those add up on top of a receiver who struggles to catch the ball and have these concentration drops, those maximize the flaws and red flags of a player. When you're a player who has maximized traits, unbelievable catch radius, acrobatic nature, crisp route running, elite burst, all that kind of stuff, the conversation of do drops matter decreases quite a bit. Malik Neighbors, my favorite receiver in the league, is a guy who had a lot of drops his first year. And he said it best when they asked him, hey, are you going to get better at getting these concentration drops out of the way? He said, well, if I drop the ball, throw it to me again. And that sounds funny, but it's true, right? When it comes to being an elite receiver, if you have all these other maximized traits, dropping the ball is just not going to be that big of a problem. And you look at it with Malik Neighbors. There was a lot of moments he dropped a few concentration balls, right? What happened? They just threw another deep shot at him, and he flips his hips, acrobatically catches the ball over another defender, doesn't matter anymore, puts up 1,200 yards rookie year, right? When it comes to these elite level athletes, it does not matter. And I know that sounds silly, but you gotta trust me here. I think history backs us up here. I think the amount of top tier receivers in the league who have concentration drop issues proves my point, right? It's just never going to be something I hold very strongly against a player. It's a flaw, though. Don't get me wrong. It is a flaw. It's the reason for me why, with that issue, he wouldn't be a tier 1 receiver, which if he didn't have a drop issue, he would be tier 1 for me, which I know is outlandish. I know some people are not going to like that. But it's where I lay with Concepcion. I think he's got incredible burst. I think he's got great yak. I think he's unbelievably acrobatic. I think he's very underrated in the sense that I think he shows a lot of similar nature in the way that he moves and strides on the field to Malik Neighbors. He's just a bit more dense and shorter. But I do think he has all those attributes. Not only that, I think he's a really crisp route runner. I think beyond just having natural separation with just how great of an athlete he is, I think he understands tempo well. I think he understands setting up defenders and destroying their backside weak leverage, like all that kind of stuff. And because of that, it's not just hey, here's this savvy small route runner. It's like, no, he's bigger than he looks. He catches way outside of his frame. He has a way bigger catch radius than he gets credit for. And it's not a strength issue at the catch point. It's a concentration one. If it was a strength issue at the catch point, this would be a bigger concern because we'd be talking about a guy that isn't able to finish catches. But the reality is, half the time it's concentration drops or it's a hands clapping kind of problem, right? It's never really a, wow, this guy got out-muscled. You rarely see that with Concepcion. So for me, he's wide receiver 2. I think he's absolutely in that tier 2 with, Tyson and Lemon and Tate, regardless of what others might say. If the league were as high on him as I am, he'd be taken in the top 10, but he's not. So wherever he goes is going to be incredible value. Now, let's get into my wide receiver 3. My wide receiver 3 kind of changes, honestly, because these two guys are pretty close. But I have Makai Lemon here, and I think you can probably imagine Tyson's my 4. But these two are pretty interchangeable. Lemon, I feel like I don't need to reiterate what a lot of other people have already said about Lemon, right? Dominant slot player, reminds you of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think hands are incredible. Sometimes he can play X. I wouldn't put him out at X a lot. I think he's mostly slot. Flaws-wise, he can get a little bit mixed up in press coverage. I think that can sometimes be a bit of an issue. Zone coverage, he's incredible, though. I think he's incredibly smart in zone coverage. Man coverage, sometimes he can get pushed around. There's a few times you saw him getting a little bit bullied on certain routes. But I wouldn't say any of these are necessarily big problems. And it's the reason why he's wide receiver 3 for me. Like I said, I think he compares very similar to, more than likely, I would probably say, a Amon-Ra St. Brown more than a JSN. When people use JSN comps, it kind of annoys me because JSN was a lot more of a smoother, elusive type athlete, whereas I think the Amon-Ra, Makai Lemons, much more compact, true power slot. They're not Puka Nacua, but much more in that arc type of range than a JSN, who's a lot more smooth and agile and twitchy. I don't think Lemon's that, but he comes in at 3 for me. And 4 is Jordan Tyson, which is the most interesting conversation. Now, keep in mind, all 4 of these top guys are tier 2 guys to me. These are guys that I would all take top 12, right? So I view these guys quite highly. With that being said, as much as I love Tyson, and I would love if he goes really early, I think he's a great player, there are flaws to his game. And when we have the conversation about Tyson, it's in a weird conversation right now where he had his private workouts, and now everyone's posting him, running routes on air and being like, that's wide receiver 1. He's not wide receiver 1. I think he has the ability to become wide receiver 1 in this class, but he has a lot of flaws that I think need to be cleaned up. They are very coachable. They are very fixable. But they're there. They don't sway me from taking him outside the top 10 at all. Again, I view him very highly. But I hate when we pretend that he's some flawless prospect if the injuries weren't taken into account. The thing with Tyson is, as awesome of a twitchy route runner that he is, he oversells his routes similar in that Jerry Jeudy type of range, right? When you see him, working leverage on a post or a dig route or an out route, you'll notice he's very much digging that right leg inside for this very crazy twitchy move, but it ends up not doing much, and he ends up getting about the same separation he would have if he kept his foot more to the defender's, blind side to push out and get much more leverage. And the reason why is not because he's doing a bad job selling the route necessarily, but he's just going so fast with it and doing it without thinking that the defender's not even really looking towards his side to see if Tyson's going to go inside or outside. He's not really looking at that. So Tyson ends up kind of wasting movement a lot of the times with a lot of these moves. And then the same thing when it comes to head fakes. He'll do a head fake that looks so cool, but it didn't really do anything to the defender because the defender wasn't really looking, and it was so quick that he had no time to process if that was actually going to be the inside move. And so that ends up becoming a big problem with Tyson a lot of the times. People do these cut-ups and they're like, you're saying this guy's not wide receiver 1, and it's like, are you seeing what's happening on screen? Are you seeing what's happening here? Not much is changing with these little moves. And here's the thing. These are all fixable, very coachable. Now, if he goes to the right environment, you can clean these up very quickly, right? They're not a big issue to me in terms of progression, but they're flaws. They're flaws, and they are kind of glaring sometimes. Along with that, he struggles with press coverage quite a bit sometimes. There's a lot of times you see him getting pushed around. And sometimes you do see him being inconsistent at the catch point. He makes unbelievable catches sometimes, but there is a play strength concern there when he tries to catch the ball. And I think a lot of people don't want to admit that, even though that is very true. But it's there. And those major issues are why I have concerns with Tyson. Now, if you want the positives, you already know it. Light feet, unbelievably twitchy, so smooth as an athlete. Reminds me a little bit of Garrett Wilson mixed with Amari Cooper. He has all those tendencies, and I think those make him have such incredible upside. I think he's awesome against zone coverage, very underrated against zone coverage. But these flaws need to be acknowledged, and nobody seems to acknowledge them. It seems to either be he's too injured, he's going round 2, or it becomes, no, you're all wrong. He's wide receiver 1. Like, why are we overthinking this? And it's like, no, he has glaring issues. I don't know why we pretend these don't exist. They're fixable, but they're glaring. He reminds me, grade-wise for me, of a Brian Thomas Jr. range, which is still awesome. I would be totally fine if he goes top 10. But with that being said, let's get into my wide receiver 5, which is Omar Cooper Jr. This drops down to the next tier 3 for me. I think Cooper's nice. I struggled with Cooper quite a bit when I first was going through the tape. The reason why is because I don't really see a lot of traits that make me think he'd be a very complimentary X receiver nor flanker. I think this is a mainly slot only player that I think is going to have to be worked in a way that reminds me of almost like a really diet Luther Burden if Luther Burden couldn't play X. And don't worry, I don't think these things are big issues. I think Cooper still could be a huge target vacuum. I think he could absolutely be such a superstar as a wide receiver 2. I just don't really ever see him becoming a wide receiver 1. He just doesn't have that ability to me. I do think his contested catch though and ball tracking is quite underrated. As I went through the tape, I do think that those aspects of the game could be portions of his game that end up translating really well to playing X sometimes or being trusted to be that slasher. So I don't think it's impossible for him to get a more expanded role. But to me, he's like, that's your slot guy. That's your power slot guy that's going to dominate. That's not really like a move him around the, entirety of your deployment kind of guy. But that could change. I don't think it's impossible. But that's kind of where I end up with him. But still, I think he's a really good player. I just think he's more towards that, top 20 to 32 range to me rather than top 10 or top 15. But I do like Cooper quite a bit. I think he's very compact. Guys just kind of fly off of him, and that's awesome. So I think if anyone's looking for a superstar wide receiver 2 or a guy that can develop behind some of your other guys, that's the one for you. I would take him first round. So next is wide receiver 6 for me in this first round, which is Denzel Boston, who might honestly to me be better than Cooper because he has way more versatility, but I just ended up giving Cooper the leverage just because I do think he can do so much damage through the slot. But I do think Boston might have more upside. And the reason why is because I think Boston is in that family tree of Mike Evans types, which is to me like Mike Evans, Drake London, Tedero McMillan, Michael Pittman, that kind of range where you're either this deep vertical piece as an X receiver or your power slot type of X who can be deployed at X, but maybe teams like to play around with you and give you easy looks in the slot. I think his ceiling could be like a Michael Pittman type. I think that'd be awesome, which is why sometimes in mocks I've had him going to the Steelers, even though they don't need another big body X guy, even though I know that might be a little bit silly. But I do love Boston. I think he moves really well for his size. I've seen some people critique him and that, man, he really can't he can't decelerate that well. And it's like, yeah, do you see how big he is? What are your expectations? Do you see how huge he is? I think for his size, he moves well. I think he's underrated as a route runner. I think he's underrated as a guy that can work leverage and work zone coverage quite well. I think obviously the negatives are going to be that he's just not that superb juice-wise as an athlete, as much as he is a physical presence, but I don't think that's a big deal. I think if he's your 2, he's going to be great. So I am very high on Boston. I don't think I'm necessarily like wide receiver 2 like Nate Tice has him, or wide receiver 3 like Theo Ash has, like if you've seen any of his content. I'm not there. I'm definitely not there, but I am definitely in the range of like, this is a first round guy to me. You could argue him over Cooper for me. I think those two are in that tier 3 range. So to kind of recap on these 6 first round guys to me, you have 4 tier 2 guys, which I think is a lot. That's great. So I wonder what that run on receivers is going to look like. And then to me, you have the 2 tier 3 guys, which are great. That grades out to that Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Ladd McConkey range of guys. So if you're looking for a receiver in the first round, this is the time to do it. I think after 6, we get to a bit of a drop off in the second round. I wouldn't take anyone else in the first round besides these guys. But I like the class. I think it's a really nice class. I had a great time going through these guys. A lot of versatility, A lot of variety, a lot of variables, and I think that's what you want if you're looking for depth in this class, or if you're looking for superstars at the top, and I think there's plenty of superstars at the top. Contrary to belief, I don't agree with these people who think that, oh man, there's not a Jamar Chase, so I wouldn't take them in the top 10. I think that's bogus. I think if you would have taken 10 last year, you should be able to be taking any of these 4 in the top 10. So that's where I land on these guys. I hope you guys like this video. I hope it's helpful, or if you're just gonna end up watching the draft first and then come back to these videos, you'll see where I stand. I think that my hit rate for these guys in the first round has been pretty good the past couple of years. I feel like I truly know what I'm talking about when it comes to receiver play, but you can always miss, so you never know at the end of the day. But that's it for now, guys. I appreciate you watching this if you went all the way through. Let me know what you think. If you tend to disagree with me, I love these discussions. You could think I'm wrong about all of these, and that would make sense. Let me know down below, and thank you so much for watching. See you guys later.